Well, not directing gives you other advantages. You don't have to worry about it. The other part of directing is that you end up working from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep at night. And it's a very constant thing. It's sort of all encompassing, and it eats up all of your time in every waking moment. And so in this particular picture, I was mostly performing Kermit, and so I was able to relax and kid around, and in between takes I could talk to people and make phone calls and enjoy a cup of tea and that sort of thing. So it's a very different thing. In this film, one of the nice things is that Frank wrote Kermit. Really, he wrote him so well. He wrote some very funny scenes for Kermit, and so as a performer, as an actor, I really had a good time, because Kermit got to do about 4 or 5 totally zany different situations, and where he was playing a producer one time, and he was playing this hotshot, sort of a Hollywood salesman type person, and so I really had a good time as an actor in this film. The personality of Kermit is certainly part of mine, or there's a connection there. And at the same time, Kermit is not me, and I'm not him. I mean, it is a different personality there, but there's a definite connection. I don't know. People talk about alter ego, but I'm not really sure what that means even. Well, it's very much like acting. I mean, if you say there's more to acting than walking around and moving your mouth and words coming out, it's a whole thing. It is very much getting into into a personality, and becoming that personality, and thinking through that character, so that the concept is that that character is doing the thinking and the living. So it's a matter of transferring all of this, and in terms of puppetry, it's a matter of transferring it all to your hand. So you're really acting and doing, hopefully, a very complete performance right through your hand. I always feel the magic of the puppets is really the way they come to life, and the way you can look at this piece of cloth or foam rubber and you make it a real character, and you believe it, and you like it, and you laugh at it. To me, that's real magic. And it doesn't matter if you see how it's done or not. To me, the fact that you can see people operating it, or whatever tricks we use, I don't think of those as secrets. I don't think of it as something that we need to hide from people. Little kids come into the studio when we're operating, and they'll see half of a puppet. They'll see half of a personality. It ends at the waist, and they believe the character completely. It's a total belief thing. That to me is the real magic. I don't think I can explain why these characters, what brings them to life. There's something about why little boys like teddy bears and little girls play with dolls. There's this desire to have this little figure that you enjoy cuddling and relating to and believing is real. And I think something of that has to do with what puppets are, but I'm not sure what. Gave Kermit an opportunity to stretch, to become a little bit more interesting, I think, instead of just the fairly more limited personality that he is most of the time. And I think that's a lot of the way Frank thinks, which is really nice. It's the way Frank creates his own personalities. Miss Piggy, it has enormous range and depth, and Frank was applying some of that kind of range to Kermit, it worked out very nicely. Working the way we do, watching a monitor, you become rather separated from that personality. It's a nice thing in that you watch the screen, and the screen becomes a living creature. And Kermit to me is alive on the screen there, and very often you have fun just playing with it, and you try things, you experiment a little bit, you find a few things that you might be able to use in the scene or not, and sometimes it's quite just entertaining, and we very often just play with each other, the characters in between takes. I think in this film we did some things with Kermit that we've never done before, and he became certainly playing these different parts and going through a kind of emotional highs and lows that he did here. So I think you're always looking, you're always experimenting, you're always trying to find new directions. But this film did give us the opportunity to go a little broader than we have before. We've never done a film in New York City before, and so just being able to go home in between takes or at the end of the day, and to have people around that and to know your territory was a lot of fun. On the other hand, it was a very warm summer, and the studio got very hot every now and then, and we found it some of the warmest working conditions that we've ever had, I think. When we were working on location, we got just a very nice, happy feeling from the people on the street. People would come up and they're very friendly. It was not at all annoying. I don't think we ever had crowds that bothered us. They were always enjoying the situation, standing around. Kids would like to say hello to characters and things like that. So it was always a very warm, supportive kind of feeling that we got from the people around. It's harder because there are not the platforms, there's not the whole television system around us that we work with in a studio. But on the other hand, it's fun. It's a challenge to try to create a reality there. And I always love the look of the characters outdoors. I think they always look a little bit more believable out in sunlight. And you take these characters, which are basically rather cartoon-like, and you put them in the very realistic world of outside that you can tell is outdoors. And to me, then they have an additional reality. In theory, the puppet's head has to be only about 3 or 4 feet or about 3 feet from the ground. So the only way we can do that is by building these very low rolling dollies, and we usually lie down on them with a monitor maybe sitting on our chest or something like that. And when a whole crowd of performers or a whole crowd of puppets have to walk along, then we sort of get all stacked up on these low rolling dollies, and we're all kind of piled on top of each other, and it's kind of silly and sometimes funny. You live in a world of your own. You're there, and you're actually operating the character that you're doing, and again, you take all of your frame of reference from the television monitor that you're looking at, so you hardly notice anything that's happening on the street or what's happening around you. Well, puppetry is a very wide field. It encompasses a lot of different ways of operating hand puppets and marionettes and rod-controlled figures and people working in black. There are many, many different techniques, and I feel that we can use them all. We try to use a lot of them. I believe in using any technique that will work for, if we're doing television, for the shot we're doing or for a film. So I'm not a purist in terms of what puppetry is or what it should or shouldn't be. And we're getting into a lot of more elaborate techniques particularly for movie making. I think something like E.T. to me is a puppet. The characters in Star Wars are really blending into puppetry, and all of that stuff is very exciting because it's also the technology is growing all the time. People are able to do more and more. And I think right now it's very exciting because I have the feeling you can do almost anything with these guys. One of the most difficult and complicated sequences was the little rat number in the kitchen, and I worked on that one a good deal. It was complicated in that each little piece that we shot had to be thought out very carefully beforehand. We did it on a fairly elaborate storyboard, and then we made mechanisms and we did marionette controls just to do one particular action. There was a rat skating on the griddle with butter and things like that. And so that was one kind of control, and then when he was spinning on the griddle, it was a whole different rig, it's a whole different rat. And so it was complicated. It was hard to make it happen. But by planning it out very carefully beforehand, the shooting itself was not that difficult. The wedding scene, the complication of that was, of course, the number of performers we had there. I think this certainly is probably one of the most populated Muppet shot we've ever done. There was one shot in the first Muppet movie that used a lot of characters. I think we were probably close to 200 characters in the, because very many of the performers were working too. So there were a lot of puppets there. The character is alive, and that character takes on a life of its own. Frank can ad-lib scenes funnier than he would have thought about if you asked him beforehand, you know, or he's just a very gifted, spontaneous performer. He has a great sense of comedy. He's very precise in terms of his characters and what they're all about. You know, he thinks through the depth of why they are and what they came from and what their background is and what's going through their heads. And all of that, I don't know, creates just, you know, wonderfully real characters. I think, you know, Frank would be good if he was, you know, if these are real people, or he probably is a very good actor himself. And I think it's a lot of that is just thinking as an actor. Because he thinks as an actor, I think he can relate very well to other actors. And because he's worked so much in television and films, he really knows what he's doing. And I think the film came off very good. We had started, Frank was writing it, and he was most of the way finished writing the script. And at that time, I was looking at the year ahead, and I thought my own life was going to be very busy, and I thought maybe this is a time to have Frank try directing one of these, and I asked him if he would like to try it. And I think he went into shock first, and then he said he wanted a couple of days to think about it, and then he came back and he said yes, he would really like to try it. And so I was delighted. I knew he could do it, and I knew he would do a very good job. Different voices affect you different ways. Like Kermit tends to go sharp, and I have to, you know, because of the way I'm doing his voice, it slightly pushes the voice slightly sharp. Other characters, Dr. Teeth is a different sort of story. I love singing Dr. Teeth, but he's very hard on my throat. In other words, I can only do a couple of takes before my voice starts to get hoarse, and then I lose the depth of the character. Kermit's voice it's very much my own voice, and I just tighten, I don't know, I think I tighten throat muscles. And Kermit sort of sounds like that, you know, but it's close to my own voice, and sometimes I slide into my own voice by mistake, and Frank then always has to tell me that. There are two different kinds of things, you know, why do puppets work? And I mean, what makes puppetry work? And I think there's certain kinds of things that you answer and you say, well, puppets are good because they work sort of on a very simple level. They work on a very stylized, abstract, symbolic level. And that's one reason that puppets work. But why the Muppets work, I think, is mostly due to the fact that this is a whole group of people that do this. You know, a group of very talented people. You know, the talented writers and the builders and the designers and the performers. You know, so it's a whole group of people that, as a group, I think, are incredibly talented. We knew we wanted to have cameo roles in the film. And Frank was very specific that he didn't want to just kind of, you know, bring in a comedian and just stick him into the film. That he wanted to write little tiny parts and then find the person who was really best for that particular part. And so that's how we, you know, went about casting all of those cameos. You know, when Frank wrote the scene with the sales lady in the department store, and in thinking about it, we thought Joan Rivers would be ideal in that particular part. And similarly with Dabney Coleman, you know, the scene was written first, and then we tried to figure out who we thought would be ideal playing that part. And Dabney was our first choice, you know.